Okay. Hey, everyone. Janelle Moss here. And we are doing Tuesday night book club. And we are doing What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. And I read this book a long time ago. Um, Apparently, we've never done it for book club. I didn't remember if we did or did not, but apparently we have not. And I remember when I first started sharing and first started doing book club, this was one that Jamie said made a huge difference in her life. So I read this probably probably 8 years ago ish, and I remember thinking, wow, it was just very eye-opening. I hadn't read anything like this before. But since then, I have recommended it to a ton of people, have lent out my book. I actually lost my book. I think I've bought two or three copies and never gotten a couple of them back. So, but it's worth reading. And so, even for people, even for my kids, I just want to have them read this because I think it really can be life-changing if we apply it. And he talks about that here too. So, in the three chapters that we're going to discuss tonight, the author is really just showing us how much our self-talk matters, okay? Not just like in how we feel, but in what we actually do. And it can affect our self-talk affects what we do. So in chapter 19, internal motivation, he talks about how a lot of us rely on outside things to push us along. For example, we wait for someone to encourage us or for a motivational speaker, kind of gut check here, think convention or corporate events. Um, and maybe even the pressure of a deadline. Do we procrastinate until we have to do it? That's outside motivation. And while these things can help, they never last. Okay. And we know that. So once that moment is over, we usually fall back into the same old habits. But real motivation, the kind that actually sticks, has to come from inside ourselves. So the way that we build that is through the things that we tell ourselves every single day. And if we're constantly saying, I'll never get this right, or that's just who I am, then no pep talk in the whole world is going to override that. But when we start choosing to repeat words that build us up to ourselves and words that remind us of who we want to become, that's when we create motivation that doesn't wear off. He reminds us that we don't wait for motivation, we create it with our self-talk. So then in chapter 20, situational self-talk, which by the way, you guys, I think I realized either last week or the week before that some of, like, depending on the versions of the book that each of us have, some of the chapters are different. So this is the book I'm using. I don't know what edition it is, but these are the chapters I have. I know some of yours probably are a little bit different. Like my chapter 20 might be your chapter 19, the kind of a thing. So anyway, in my chapter 20, situational self-talk, he points out how much of our everyday self-talk is automatic. It's something that we've already taught ourselves without even realizing it. And so maybe something stressful happens and we instantly respond with something that we've thought over and over and over through the years, and usually negative. Things like, here we go again. This always happens to me. Or I just can't handle this. And the problem with that is that those automatic responses shape how we feel and how we act in the moment, right? But he says the good news is we can retrain ourselves, and instead of just letting those old thought loops run in our heads, we can pause and replace them with something different, retraining our brain. So even something as simple as I've handled tough things before, I can handle this too. Like, it's truth, right? It's something we can say to ourselves that is true, but we can believe. And instead of having it have that negative twist of, here we go again, this always happens to me, we can just tweak it. And the key is catching yourself or ourselves in that moment, right? So that is going to be a discipline that we have to do. And at first, It's definitely going to feel forced, but I truly believe with practice, those new words start to become our new automatic responses. And to me, that is such an exciting and powerful thought that we can literally reprogram the way we react in the moment just by paying attention to the words we use. So, I want to give a quick example of that. And I don't even know if I realized I was doing that. But unfortunately, over the years, I've been in many doctor's offices with one of my kids, and from the time he was little. And I remember vividly sitting in one doctor's appointment, and my automatic response is I freeze, right? Some people fight, flight, or freeze. I freeze. When things just are overwhelming to me, I can't talk, whatever. So I was sitting there, and it was a neurosurgeon. He was so smart. He couldn't look me in the eye. He had no people skills. And I was alone with my son. My husband had to work a ton of hours for a lot of reasons. And I always went to these doctor's appointments alone. And it was really hard because I would have to like try to retain what I would learn and hear and take notes so that when I got home, I could try to explain to my husband how this is all going, right? And so that was just a lot of pressure on me. I hated that, but that's what we had to do. And I remember in this doctor's appointment when this doctor couldn't look me in the eye and I froze and I couldn't answer or ask a question because that was just overwhelming and overstimulating to me. My son looked at me like, Mom, why aren't you talking or what? He could tell that something was wrong. And that moment made me realize I need to do things different. I need to learn to react differently in these moments. And I did. But it was because I had, I guess I would say, my why. And it was just a revelation to me that I can change. I need to change so I can. And I don't know why that came to me when I was reading this book and this chapter, but it really just validated everything he was saying that we can reprogram our brain. And so I just wanted to share that story just as encouragement to you guys too. So, okay, and then chapter 21, getting started. He reminds us that the hardest part is just starting, right? We have that with everything. Exercise, a different, healthier way of eating, all the things that are good, we just have to start. And sometimes we tell ourselves, oh, I'll work on myself when life slows down, or I'll start when I feel more motivated. But if we keep waiting for the perfect time, we all know what happens. That perfect time never comes. So his advice is don't wait, start now, but start small, right? Start small. Pick one positive phrase, practice it every day, even if it feels silly or awkward. He compares it to planting seeds. It might not look like much at first, but over time, those little seeds grow into something stronger. Their roots grow deeper. There's more fruit. And it all started with one little seed, right? So every time we practice new self-talk, we're beginning new habits. And those habits eventually shape who we are and want to become. And to me, that's so inspiring. So when we put all of these chapters together, his message is pretty clear. Motivation is not something that will magically happen. It's something that we have to create, right? So the way we talk to ourselves in everyday situations matters. It matters way more than we think. And the way to change is just get started. So even in small, simple ways, the more often we plant those positive words, the more natural they will become to us. And the more our lives will start to shift in the direction that we actually want it to. So, those are some of the things that I got, and I would like to open up the floor and see what you guys thought. If anything really struck out to you, or if you thought of something that, like my little story, did you have anything like that that popped into your mind as you were reading these chapters? Would love to see what you guys have to share with us.
Okay, I'll jump. On page 156, I'm reading on the Kindle, so I don't know what page it is in all the books, but it says, those of us whose dream it is to improve our lives, even in some small way, can do so. If you want to solve a problem, meet a challenge, or reach any goal, learn to give yourself precise and complete directions. If you have a goal, no matter what it is, give yourself detailed instructions that tell you exactly what you want, and then stand back and get out of the way. Your expectations are about to happen. And so I was thinking on that, and um, I went to script. I was also in my devotion, and in Habakkuk 2:2, it says, write the vision and make it plain. God calls us to be clear in our prayers and bold in our faith. And when we speak his promises over our lives, align our steps with his word, and then trust him to move, we are we are walking in both faith and obedience. So I I like that he tells us to write it down. He tells us to have a vision in scripture. Those are not things that are man-made. God wrote it in the book, in the Bible, so we can follow that with confidence. And so that's one thing that stood out to me.
It's funny you picked that one too, Gina. I was looking up at above it, but it flowed into that one. I really liked that section at the end of 19. Um, it just the key to good self-talk is that it covers the problem and it gets specific. And I know we've talked about this already, but I don't know personally, um, I get overwhelmed very easily. I just have, and it's something I have actually grown in. I don't get that way like I used to anymore. And um, and it was really bad in my early 20s. And then when I had child number one, and he was just a total tornado, and we had to throw our hands up. You had a school principal and a teacher who couldn't even control their child's behavior, and we felt at a loss. And then child number two came, and he's just as much of a stinker. And then we had twins right after that. And I just remember throwing my hands up and saying, Lord, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't know how to do this. And and it wasn't until people started speaking specific things to me about like, yes, you can, and like telling me to flip the script that I started to believe in myself more. And I think that's what we do here. Like, I think one of my strengths maybe is encouragement. And I think that is something that I've tried to really, when I want a problem to be fixed, I try to just be very specific, um, and take it one little bit at a time rather than like, oh, I have to lose, you've always heard like you can't lose 100 pounds in 3 months. Like maybe you could, but wouldn't be very healthy, right? It's better to lose a pound a week or a 1 to 2 pounds a week. And it's just, it's the same here when it comes to the mental stuff too. Like you just have to one little bit at a time change what you're thinking. So. I liked that part. And I love that you aligned it to scripture, Gina.
I really appreciated all of his examples that he gave us as far as like writing them all out and like just how specific he got with each one of them. So I really appreciated the examples. But something that stuck out to me was when he talked in the situational self-talk chapter about the um, chemicals that our body releases when we react negatively to something and how long they stick around. Um, that surprised me that even for just like a few minutes of a negative situation and letting our brains go on that negative pathway, it actually can take basically all day to get those chemicals out. And most of them are toxic. So, like, you're just sitting in all those toxic chemicals all day if you can't like stop yourself from thinking on that negative pathway. So, that really stuck out to me on like, I need to be better about catching some of the negative stuff faster so that it doesn't affect all day.
So good. Did anybody have like any thoughts pop into their head um, that aligned with our businesses or your business? Like something that you either struggle with or like Kristen said, she's actually gotten better at um, business wise. I'm curious, like more confident in your business, or do you see a pattern in yourself with negative self-talk and when your business is down, anything like that?
I can speak to this one big time. Um, so when I started doing this, I wasn't going to do this. And then when I did decide to do this, I didn't tell anybody. And then once I started telling my sponsor what I was doing, it was just like I said, she was one of the people in my life that was feeding me how to flip the script in my mind. And at first, it was, oh, I'm only going to share about the products. I don't want to do that business thing. And then, you go to events and you meet people in the community and you're like, huh, well, this is, your belief grows. And um, I think my belief has slowly grown over time. And I just have to learn to never say never because God in his power is going to make you do what he wants you to do, or he's going to ask you to do what he wants you to do, and you have to obey and follow. And so I can identify that shift for sure of when I wanted to share the business. It was after my first convention, for sure, like of going and I would hear about people saying, leaders are born at events, whatever. And I fought it. I fought it. I fought it. But afterwards, I was like, this this is awesome. And I saw myself starting to flip the script myself and then starting to tell other people how to flip the script when they had those thoughts that I was having. And that accountability of having people on my team and having to speak life into them, like it grew me and it's still growing me. And I think that's the beautiful thing of what we get to do is that we grow and then we get to help others grow in the same way. So.
Love that.
The end of chapter 19, that he says the instead of spending a few minutes engaged in the highly productive activity of motivating ourselves to take action, we engage ourselves in talking ourselves out of action and into having another cup of coffee. And there's two thoughts I have on that. And the first one is a lot of times we we blame where we're at or what's going on our circumstance or how we just don't feel motivated or we just don't feel excited or energized when honestly it's all within here that's controlling that. Like it's an internal thing. And like you said, if we were to take those minutes instead of talking ourselves out of doing something hard or doing something scary or sitting down and actually taking some action, I mean, things would shift. We would be rewiring our brains in a way where we would want to be highly productive. We would want to do activity. We would want to be working our businesses and doing the hard things that are uncomfortable because we would believe that we can and that we would believe that it would be fruitful and that there would be an outcome worth working for on the other side of that. And if we were to talk that way to ourselves instead of letting that little quiet train that seems to like just run us off the tracks all the time, take precedence and just kind of affirm that we should just be sitting back and be comfortable and having another cup of coffee and sitting in our woes because things just aren't happening, right? When we're actually causing that outcome when we do that. And also, it just made me so keenly aware of how most people that we talk to when we prospect are in that state of mind. They are used to talking themselves out of doing things, like they out of action and just sitting back and being comfortable. And I know that when I got started, this all the things that I've learned and that we talk about here in book club and stuff, that was all foreign to me then too. So I can relate. But it makes me want to just, understand people better when I'm prospecting them and also remember, like, put myself in their shoes because I was in those shoes. So, in how I'm speaking to them and how I'm relating to them, how am I encouraging them, like speaking life into them to help them recognize that where they're at is not something that is set in stone, that actually can be changed, just like anything else that can be learned, and just kind of teaching them that too. But that starts with just little steps in the beginning of kind of opening that door. But we're in the business of relationships, and I think that's a big part of it when we're relating to people because they feel like they have no other choice but to be where they're at. They don't think that there is a possibility of something other than where they're currently at, and we get to show them that there is. So that's cool.
That is so true, Shell. And that makes me think of too, like, when we do like three-way welcome calls or whatever, um, I try to ask people, where would you like to be, like not Plexus related, but where would you like to be in life a year from now? What are your dreams for your family for 5 years from now? Most people have no idea what to say. They don't even think about it. And I didn't either. But I think it's good to plant that little seed and get them thinking and, share that, hey, if you can come up with something, we can help you get there. And we're more than willing. Um, yeah, I'm actually going to close with something else, but does anybody else have anything in the meantime? Got a couple more minutes left. No? Okay. Well, we'll keep it a little shorter tonight. But I had one question pop into my mind that I wanted to do one little action step for you guys. And you can choose to write it down and send it to your sponsor or show it to your spouse or whatever. But I want you to do this because when this popped into my mind, my first reaction was excitement when I thought of it. So I want you to imagine yourself a year from now. Okay. And if every single one of us, if you kept and stayed vigilant and you really stuck with this positive self-talk, if you found some of these you're like, yes, those are me, or if you made some that you're like, I need to work on this. If you did this for a year, very, very consistently, how do you think your life or your reactions to challenges would look different? I want you to think about that because I think every one of us should be able to say our lives would be better and improved. If we can really reprogram our brains, that to me is just so exciting. We don't have to stay stuck. And the fact that God made our brains able to be rewired for good is just, it's humbling, honestly. And so why wouldn't we, right? I mean, very good point, Gina. Who can I bless today? But I also can bless myself today by becoming a better person so I can pour better into others. Like we can flip that too, right? Um, and I love what you said, Kristen, about just being an encourager and pouring into people. And that's a strength of yours. That should be all of ours. And if it's not natural, then we practice it, right? But also being conscious of doing that to ourselves, right? So, anyway, that's my challenge. I want you to really think about that. How could your life change and be better if you would do this very diligently and consistently for the next year? All right. If nobody else has anything, we're going to call it. I think we probably only have 1 week left, and I do not know of the next book yet, so I'm sure that will be announced soon. So, all right. Thank you all for showing up and spending your valuable time with us here tonight. We appreciate it. Love you all. Good night.